Meeting is called to order. Please proceed.
Good evening, Commissioners. We are here again to continue our Community for All Ages assessment, and this evening's our topics surround social inclusion, communication, and participation, and the second topic is civic participation and employment. Some of the things that we want to highlight are our current efforts, and obviously we're here so that you have an opportunity to expand on what is there and create additional possibilities in the community. I did make an effort to share with our Palmer Center and Parks and Recs to kind of get the word out so that we would get a little bit more engagement from the community so that we could have their input as well. Unfortunately, it may not have been enough in this last moment, so we're going to continue to try to move forward with the topic. Our experts that we've invited are Meg Lewis, our communications officer, public information officer from City Manager's Office, and Ms. Cheryl DeHaan. She is here on behalf of our Parks and Rec Director, Eric Erfer. I wanted to highlight some of the best practices as far as our efforts and what Community for All Ages has suggested that we do in an effort to create best practices for age-friendly community. And that is first and foremost surrounding communication, is to first and foremost have a communication plan. And I'm sure Meg will go into specifics about that. We need to seek public input, and we have done that in many terms. We've done that with our comprehensive plan. Imagine 2040, we had an effort to go out into the community and make sure that people of all ages were participating and had a voice to what would go on for the next several decades. So that effort is there. We also want to ensure that market existing and new community services and promotes to market existing new community services and promote success within the community, create opportunities for intergeneration interaction, and encourage organizations to collaborate in using existing facilities. Our Palmer Center has a host of programs that are offered to all. And so when we hear more from Ms. DeHaan, we will try and see what are other opportunities and where in the community outside of Parks and Rec can we create opportunities for integration amongst all. So those are just a few things. And again, we have Ms. Kathy Seychel and Julie McLaughlin to facilitate this process, and hopefully we can get through both of them tonight. So we're ready to move forward. Thank you.
I could do a spoiler alert. We will get through these tonight, even without Woody ramping on the walls, at least yet. Before we get started, I just wanted to mention kind of the way I left it the last time is that the first three topics were very much a part of what P&Z do. It was all around built environment. As we go through the last three topics, they're going to be kind of outside the realm of what your commission typically does. It's the communication, social inclusion, more residents and how the community reacts and interacts with residents, and then the final one on health services. So I know you have your P&Z hats on, but if you can also kind of put maybe a bigger resident hat, because these next three topics are really have more to do with the city's interaction with residents. So a little bit different than what your scope of work typically is. So as we've done in the past, we'll go through each of the policies and actions, and city staff will give the current assessment, and then there'll be discussion on whether there's more that the city might do or tweak it. I also brought some examples of what some of the other cities did for these two topics, just to give a framework for some of their discussion. So the first, and you'll notice there's only 5 on 3 policies and 2 actions for social inclusion, communication, and participation. And the reason that this is important for livable communities for all ages, it really leverages the knowledge, skills, experience of all ages and abilities, all diversity. And some of these questions will be asking how the community communicates to the diverse populations. So when we get to those. So the first policy is the city and its partners understand the demographic makeup of residents, engages with the community, and then designs programming, including recreational opportunities that respects the needs and interests of diverse populations. And I believe that the park person is going to talk about the current assessment, or someone is.
Well, we certainly have the data to support the efforts that Parks and Rec has implemented as far as programming. We were in hopes that Mr. Urfer would be here to kind of highlight some of those, but if Meg wants to speak more on it, we certainly are.
So I think Independence has some unique programs that have truly looked to meet a diverse population through our adaptive, particularly adaptive play programs. McCoy Park has become a nationally recognized adaptive playground that allows family members of all abilities to access and play in a public way. We have the Miracle League baseball field there also at McCoy Park, and have also added an adaptive hockey and sled hockey program at the Centerport Ice Arena. So there are a lot of ways that we're looking for programs that allow us to work with all abilities in the family. We have the Heritage Festival that celebrates the differences of the members of our community and our cultural backgrounds. And then we have, those regular programs that bring all types of families together, baseball and football and those other things in the community that we support as needed through the Parks program.
The cities that have gone through this level, this is one of the highlights because everyone is doing such a good job with their recreational programs and their community centers, if they have senior centers. So this is typically as an easy one to talk about. So a question might be is if, again, from a resident point of view, if any discussion on the robustness of recreational programming for folks over the age of 50 or 65.
Hi, I'm Cheryl DeHaan from the Palmer Center with the City of Independence, and would like to talk some about the programs that we have for those over the age of 60. We are looking at incorporating evidence-based programs and have completed our first Aging Mastery program, which is an evidence-based program through the National Council on Aging, and we'll be offering our next Aging Mastering program coming up beginning again in July. As well as we've been able to add Tai Chi for arthritis. We'll be offering the DEEP, a diabetes education program, and a chronic disease management program. And so looking at offering those evidence-based educational programs to meet the needs of the older adults in our community, as well as we offer the nutritional program on site on weekdays, as well as a wide variety of other fitness and education programs, as well as travel opportunities. And so we do surveys as well to get input on what the interests and needs of the seniors are.
So I might Yes, before you sit down, because this is an opportunity for staff as well to say if there's, considering the 90,000-foot vision of this for communities for all ages, would there be a staff recommendation on what the city might do to enhance the programming for older adults? And it's okay if it's not, it's just this is an opportunity.
I feel good about the direction that we're headed, and so just supporting the programs, this direction towards the evidence-based and the overall wellness for the seniors.
Can I ask how many people are involved in the Palmer Center? Do you know?
It's a wide range. I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head. We have the nutrition site program, which on any given day is probably 50 to 60, but I know we touch well over 100 regular visitors. They're just not there each day. But then with our fitness classes, I know we're well over 100. We have an active pickleball program in addition to our fitness room memberships, the travel program. So we have people who take advantage of maybe just the fitness niche or just the meal or just the travel. So I know it's several hundred at least that we touch, but I apologize, I don't know the exact number.
Do we have programs, not just at Palmer and Sermon, but do we have any in the Eastern Independence, sorry?
I know the majority take place at either the Palmer Center or Truman Memorial Building. A number of our Silver Sneakers classes are at Truman Memorial. We've also done some programming with George Owens, where we've taken the things to George Owens. And then with our travel program, we may go some different places, but the core tends to be at Palmer Center, Truman Memorial Building, or Sermon Center.
So if you had a dream, would you have these programs available in different pockets in Independence so that it was more inclusive to everybody who lives in and around? Would that be like a dream?
I think that's an excellent vision, an excellent idea. Yes.
And does AARP support any of these? Do we get money from them for any of these programs?
We don't have financial support from AARP. They do come in and do like their safe driver course, or when we had our annual health fair, they have like a vendor booth and things like that. We do get support from the Mid-America Regional Council, and we work with them with our nutrition program as well as these evidence-based programs, and so we're supported with them.
Thank you.
Given the medical advances and the frequency of knee replacement, hip replacements, what is in the future as best you can for lazy river or some type of aquatic buoyancy?
Adventure Oasis does have the water walking, which we're putting out in July, going as a group 1 day a week to the water walking there at Adventure Oasis. And then I know they do other water aerobic classes at the Adventure Oasis as well.
I used to serve on the Parks Commission way back in the day. And since I haven't been serving in there for a while, I know that the program at the Palmer Center was kind of like a shining star. It was very, very, very active, and I'm assuming it still is. But my question would be, you find that the building capacity or the staff capacity is it having any limiting effect on how you serve that population? In other words, do we need to look towards expanding down the road? I mean, all of us are getting older, so.
And as we get older, definitely, there would be occasions where we may have to schedule something at a different time. Like when we wanted to start the Tai Chi for arthritis, we had a very busy schedule, and so trying to find a time that we could plug that in took a little finagling. And so there are times it could be beneficial to be able to offer things at multiple locations.
So do you find that, and again, back then, there was some discussion about doing partnerships with public schools, churches, things like that. Is that still something that's discussed, or?
We have met with someone from Independence School District about possible ways that we could partner. We've also met with Fairmount Community Center, and so this next Aging Mastery program, they have offered it once previously at their site. We've offered it once at ours. This next time we're offering it together, but at the Palmer Center. So we do try and partner with some of the other community agencies as well. Space, the layout of the building does limit us some. I know there's times it would be nice if we had meeting space upstairs, but I think our space is laid out fairly beneficially with what we have.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear that you're busy still and all that. So, and I hope it continues to be that way, and that somehow the city can, if you guys have a need, the city can meet that. So
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Can you frame the wish that you talked about into a recommendation so that it's documented? The wish, I think, was strengthening the services.
That it would be beneficial to be able to both have the employee manpower and the ability to take some things out into the community, so to partner with potential other places, as well as have that ability to take some of the programming further into the community locations. Does that sound okay?
You can always tweak it afterwards.
Okay, thanks.
Is this, I'm sorry, is this one of those opportunities, this may be inappropriate, but whatever. Is this one of those opportunities where going forward, Parks and Rec could even partner with, there's so many church buildings in and through Independence that are empty during the week, and create senior citizen moments out there in the community? I mean, is that an opportunity that could lie ahead? Wouldn't cost them anything because buildings are already there.
So the recommendation might be to investigate partnerships with faith-based communities to partner to offer classes
Sure.
and programs, yeah. The Peculiar is just starting their bronze level, and we had the discussion today at a staff, when the staff department heads met, and they were talking about that they don't have a community center at all, so they're looking at partners in the community where they could bring out their recreation programs. And we're very proud that Mark has the regional license for the Aging Mastery Program that she just referenced, so we're so happy that Palmer is one of our partners. And I attended the graduation, which was such a lovely event, and one of the graduates was a woman who retired 4 years ago, and as I recall, had hardly left her house. So very isolated, but she seemed young, relatively young. And because of attending the Aging Mastery Program, the day of the graduation, she went up and registered to be a volunteer.
Oh.
So that program is really transforming. Oh, yeah, that's wonderful. So it's a program that I'm sure that they'll tell you about if you want more about it. But we have about 300 graduates so far in the region, and we've really only been offering it about 12 months, a little bit more than 12 months. So 4A, most of the communities are doing so well with their recreation programs. When we talk about communication, we might have a little bit more conversation about how Independence is communicating to folks that may not be on social media or on the website or read the paper, which may be the next one. So 4B, the city has a comprehensive communication plan with marketing and outreach strategies and tools that include diverse public imagery depicting all ages, cultures, and abilities. So I don't know who's.
Good question.
I know through the Indy Access program, there's not the specific bus stop, but with the Indy Access, you can fill out the application, and then they do door-to-door service where they can pick you up at your home and bring you to the door. And so we have a number of people who come to us that way through the Indy Access. It does mean filling out an application for that program, but once you've completed that, then using the Indy Access is a good option. We do have a limited number of spots for site transportation where we've contracted for someone to pick people up and bring them through that transportation.
So communication, we have a citywide communication plan that was developed last year and guides city staff in how we share information with the public, our best practices, and outlines how we utilize the city resources, which include the city's website, social media platforms, City 7, the cable access channel, the city's monthly newsletter, City Scene, and as well as pamphlets, brochures, and newsletters from the departments. So that is 1 year old and continues to be modified as needed. Through the city's strategic plan, Independence for All communication and engagement with the public has been a key goal of the council and the city staff. So most recently, one of our successful stories for public engagement was a budget town hall that was held at the Truman Memorial Building and allowed citizens to ask questions and interact with the city manager as we prepared for the approval of the city's next budget. We also had an award-winning public engagement for the comprehensive plan, which you all are very aware of. And then finally, we're also in the process of a brand review, which we are looking for public engagement. And most recently, had a citizen survey online that asked for the public to help us in shaping what that brand will look like. And we are in the research phase of that brand review. So by utilizing the print platform of City Scene, which is mailed to all of our utility bill customers who receive a paper bill, City Scene is also available on the city's website, and we share it over social media for those individuals that may not get the paper version of it. We are regularly utilizing press releases to the local media on various events and topics as appropriate, and then going into the social media aspect as well, where we have a robust engagement with the citizens on a variety of topics.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you're certainly doing a lot to try to get the word out, but I'm sure that it still doesn't get out as well as you'd probably like it to. And I guess since we're kind of talking more about old folks, has there been I mean, you print stuff off, but where is it left? I mean, because it almost has to go to them because they usually don't come to it.
So City Scene is mailed to the individual in
I
their utility
know about
bill.
City Scene, but I'm talking about, you said something about other pamphlets and things that were printed.
So, for example, the Palmer Center does a newsletter to the Palmer Center participants. For certain events and programs, there are materials that are developed just for that and sent to a specific mailing group. Parks, Rec, and Tourism does have a mailing list that they utilize for particular pieces. Tourism has developed a list of individuals that they communicate with largely through email, so it is a digital form. But there are ways that we do communicate across the platform. City Scene, for those individuals that may not receive a utility bill but want that printed copy, we have several residential living facilities that have requested to receive copies of those, and we send copies to them to have in their rooms. The public libraries have a copy of that available as well.
Okay, that's great, because that's great to hear that. Thank you. No more questions.
I do.
You may say,
I do,
oh,
I do.
sorry, spoke too soon.
Do we have any opportunities where, I know that like Parks and Rec does a great job with the hotels and getting all of our information to the hotels. Is there any, like, do we have partnerships with docs, like doctors, pediatricians, or ones that old people have to go to? And I'm saying old people because I'm including myself in that group, but do we have like, you know, where we make sure that their rooms have information on things we have available in Independence?
That is an opportunity for growth. I do not believe that we currently provide any waiting room materials. There would obviously be a cost associated with that outreach for printing of these materials, which are predominantly full color, so that has increased costs over there. It's not something that I am aware of right now, but it's definitely something that we can consider in the future.
Do you want that as a recommendation to just investigate the costs and the reach?
Or what you could put, whether it's an iPad in every office. Just kidding, Meg. Just kidding.
Well, maybe more specific, I don't know, I'll just ask a question. Have you ever had and not that I like them, but sometimes they're helpful, like an outside consultant to come in and say, you know, maybe you should consider this, or maybe you should, you know, consider that.
So we do utilize an outside advertising agency that works for the tourism department and helps, and you're probably aware of that with the park commission background. The brand review company is being done by an entity outside of the city, so they're helping us look at the different ways that we are promoting the city and how we're discussing the city, both locally and on the regional and national level. So in a way, yes, we have not done an audit necessarily of how we communicate within the city. Is that sort of what you're looking to?
I think so. You know, it's nice to have feedback from somebody, but sometimes if you have it in a printed form, or you know, like we got, I can't even remember what we just did, the planning thing we did. That comes, you know, there's a guideline to follow in that, and I don't know if you folks do that.
The brand review will include a pretty extensive guide at the end on how we communicate about the city, from the colors to the fonts to the brand story that is associated with Independence. So we're in the process of that portion of it. We had an audit done through the city council office that found that we had 40 different logos associated with the city, which was causing some confusion amongst our citizenry as to who is who. So the answer is kind of.
Good answer.
Let me ask a question of clarification. Is your question about doing an audit to see how the city's doing in communicating with its older adults? Is it a more targeted thing rather than a broad audit?
Well, it's not so much just older adults. I think it's we're talking about intergenerational folks, so it's probably everybody.
And it will be an upcoming question in the citizen satisfaction survey as to how the city is doing on the communication fronts. So that is one of the questions that has been included in the past several. So we utilize that as a benchmark to see how we are doing and improving over the years.
So, and I'm not knocking anybody. I'm just making an observation that I don't know how many of our citizens take time to read the city scene, take time to do this. I know there's probably some, maybe you know, so maybe I'll let you answer.
So I don't have any quantitative data on that. I do have qualitative data on that. So when we have any issues with the mail, we do receive regular phone calls from individuals who tell us that that is their main news source for the community because it provides upcoming events, potential changes. The June city scene, for example, outlined the budget overview from the city manager. Next month, it will highlight the recent 175th anniversary of the fire department. So the citizens, we do know, regularly interact with it because we receive calls if they don't get it. I can also say from a social media platform, we have added 3,000 followers on the city's Facebook page in the last year. The most recent, in May, we had a post that was shared more than 1.5 thousand times and viewed by over 100,000 individuals on Facebook. So we know that we are regularly reaching a significant portion of the population in the region, because that may not just be independents. As we are aware, social media does go further than just our area. We also utilize, and I apologize, I didn't mention this earlier, Nextdoor, which is a more localized app and allows us to reach. At this point, we have about 16% of the eligible households in Independence utilizing Nextdoor, which is roughly 12,000 residents on Nextdoor that we're regularly communicating with that through.
Okay. You're just full of information that you're not telling us. I'm just kidding. Thank you very much. But again, I just didn't know. It sounds like you're kind of doing that, but I didn't know if it needed to be taken a step farther as far as doing something like a formal review, just to help you folks out. I mean, there might be something out there that somebody's doing that we could do. So.
And further, as we continue this conversation, we do regularly utilize our partners to share information. So the local libraries, the community service leagues, the nonprofits in the area work with us on a regular basis for programs and initiatives to ensure that the populations that they work with directly and may have a word of mouth reputation that we could not reach the same way that they can, utilizing those relationships to get it through further into the community.
Awesome. Thank you.
Nick, I was wondering, could you share how our performance measures that are related to communication are currently measured, and if that is something required department-wise, how we could kind of change that? I know my efforts to kind of share information with the Palmer Center and Fairmont to have, meet those target audiences and have them come out. How do we kind of change those numbers, and how effective can I be when sharing information?
So over the last year, what we've done in many ways is help centralize the communications of the city. Previously, there had been a little bit of siloing from the different departments as to the communication styles and the communication efforts. So through my position and the work of the city manager's office, we have worked to create an external communications task force that meets fairly regularly to overview sort of what's coming up, what we need to talk about now, and those topics of interest to the different departments. There is always room for improvement on that. We're trying to get as many of the appropriate people from the different departments involved in that task force as possible. City staff is busy and has multiple tasks to do at a time, so not everybody can come to every meeting. So we've also combined some of our social media presence to ensure that people can find the information in a centralized location as opposed to a few thousand followers here or a few thousand followers here, and they know that there is a primary source to go to. The benchmarking. So each quarter we benchmark our growth predominantly through social media and engagement, because that is one of the easiest analytics to track. We can see that our growth in followers, our growth in engagements in the different areas, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Nextdoor, have met or exceeded our growth rates every quarter so far this year, at points dramatically because of the content that we're providing and the engagement that it is creating. We had one post in, I apologize, I believe it was February or March, regarding an upcoming business that resulted in over 300 people liking the page. So we know that we can follow the people to a degree through technology. That does not allow us necessarily to track our print media. So again, we have the qualitative data on city scene and people enjoying and engaging with that, and then we have the analytics that are backed up on the social media platforms.
So I think I should have just got the word out sooner. That was the key. Thank you.
So as you look at your zip codes, are you able to track the zip codes that would have the most isolated residents and direct social media to those zip codes?
So the way that we predominantly use social media is more of a broad spectrum, so throughout the city. Next door, we do utilize to isolate messages for a water main break or street closure that may impact a particular neighborhood. If we have an event in an area that is particular interest to residents, I can pick down to a neighborhood and a half mile around that neighborhood through Nextdoor, but we're not particularly isolating due to physical limitations of our residents.
And you do email campaigns?
Through our Parks Department and our Tourism Department, there are email campaigns that are part of the marketing strategy.
But, okay.
The city does not maintain an email list that is all-inclusive of the residents.
Would there be an interest in identifying which neighborhoods have more isolated individuals? You know, our research department can find, I think down to the neighborhood, individuals that live alone that might be over 65. That doesn't mean that they are on social media, but they could be.
Well, we know from social media analytics that one of the fastest growing groups, and you guys are aware of this as well, is the 50-plus group is been continuous users of social media in multiple ways. So there are ways that we could utilize that to target messages with that data. I do not have that data at my fingertips on a regular basis, so it is an option to consider.
Do you want that in terms of a recommendation that emerges out of the assessment?
As far as communication to the older population, I think that it would be a reasonable recommendation, yeah.
So the recommendation would be to seek assistance in identifying the neighborhoods and the extent of socially isolated individuals? I mean, would it be like information quantifying kind of thing? Is that what? Okay.
And an easy one might be just to start with those who live alone. They tend to be more isolated by definition. So I'll share a couple examples of recommendations that came out of other cities. Not that that needs to be done here, but just some creative juices of what others are doing. In the city of Liberty, when they looked at their demographics as they went through the bronze level, they realized that they're also, not only are they having trending toward more older adults, but they're trending in a larger Hispanic population. So when we did this topic the night at Liberty, they realized that their communication wasn't really addressing the increase of the Hispanic population. So they had recommendations to really, their broad recommendation was to analyze their current communication strategies and to identify where the gaps are in addressing the Hispanic population. Their website did have the ability to click on it and translate it into Spanish. But they realized that all of their other communication, that there was an opportunity to increase that. So I guess a question would be, because I don't know your demographics, is there another population that is increasing or that is projected to increase, and are communications looking at that, or is that just a recommendation to look into that? And just as a reminder, none of this has to be solved tonight or in the next year.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I do not have, I don't have that information readily available right now. I know with the last census, we kind of can compare that, and then with what's upcoming on the next census here in a couple of years. But as far as an increasing demographic of the city, not right off the top of my head, no, I can't think of anything or specific one that is increasing more than the other, but we can definitely look into that and kind of look at the data that we have through the Census Bureau and see if there is one that sticks out.
So that would be a recommendation, is
Yeah.
just to look at other
Definitely.
trending? Okay,
Yeah.
great. And I think that there was just one other that, another city was also going through rebranding. A part of that what we're learning with Communities for All Ages is that oftentimes, and even nonprofits that serve older adults, as they do their graphics and their pictures, that they tend to have the real frail older adults. And so it's just a question, are we really looking at how we're portraying older adults in our communities in a way to combat ageism? But are we, as we select our graphics and we select our pictures, are we really showing a representation of older adults from 50 up? So that would be a question, but it sounds like you're doing a terrific job.
Generally, to avoid that, we utilize graphics that are sort of line-based, and that way you're not associating with one particular visual of a type of individual that you're working with. When we do use individuals, particularly for our aging population, we try to do a sort of more active lifestyle for those imagery, and then we try to use posts with our actual residents at the different Palmer Center events, so that we're showing who it is impacting, not necessarily a image you might just find online.
Yeah. So you're not using stock photography?
We do use stock photography periodically for promotional pieces as appropriate, but when we are doing Facebook events and other such things, we do generally try to use images from our actual events in the community.
Yeah.
And another part of that too is images that are representative of the diversity in the community too. So it's just being on top of that. And then the final, that the recommendation was to kind of do an audit of the communications plan to ensure that a variety of methods of communication are utilized, but you just talked about like 20 different forms. Another recommendation was to consider approaching high school, local high school, about availability of students who may be able to assist with social media. And that's not, and I think this one came from a really small city, so that they could use that capacity. But it might be a way too to engage high schoolers so that their social media is reaching that age group.
So on that front, I have regular conversations with our school districts to ensure that we are collaborating as appropriate and are looking at potential opportunities to utilize content developed by our high schoolers for future communications efforts. So not necessarily social media, but we know that our high schools have some very robust broadcast programs and are looking at opportunities of ways that we can utilize that. So stay tuned for more information.
You know, you could also do an intern for that. I mean, I don't, you may already do that. I'm new, so I don't know, but a college intern that just did social media for the summer would be great.
So we are in the process of some staffing changes to add an additional person that will help with content largely for social media, for Parks, Rec, and Tourism, and the rest of the city. We have conversations about an intern, but we have not been able to move forward at this time on that effort.
I will take the opportunity just to say that I think you are doing a brilliant job. That I have noticed a huge difference within the last year, just how even the communication feels. It just is so positive and it's always uplifting. And I do feel like we really are we show who we are. I just think you are doing a great job.
This often happens as cities go through the assessment, that it's like we've got some game in a lot of this. The final one on this, and it might help with the recommendation that came out of the 4B, another community's recommendation is to develop an outreach program with apartment complexes and faith-based community in the city, so that might kind of be integrated with the, as looking at partners to help with recreation programs. And that might be a way to help expand on the communication. So any other comments about this one? 4B. Okay, 4C, and I need to go to the exact. The city communications plan requires that information about accessibility of facilities and transportation options, which goes to the question that you had, is included when publishing information about city activities and events. And while you're coming up here, I can mention about what some other recommendations from other cities. One is, while this is not a requirement, staff will start communicating and educating other staff in the immediate future to include this information on all meeting agendas and website calendar items. And the communication staff will also encourage community services staff to include transportation options, activities, and events as they announce their meetings. And the final one, the communications plan will include an action step to provide information about accessibility of facilities throughout the community. And the city will ensure that information relative to transportation options for residents is included in all communications plans. Of course, the challenge is transportation is always the issue of not enough availability and not enough accessibility. So it makes it a little bit difficult to communicate it when there's not enough there.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I'll add real quick, with our transportation system, one thing that council did pass with this budget this year was to increase bus service on Indy Bus. Currently right now even is ends at 6 o'clock at night, and we're increasing that 1 hour to 7, which for a lot of our public meetings that take place at 6 o'clock at night, that will really help those areas. And again, a lot of other public meetings that we have that take place at night, that helps out there as well too. Other than that, I mean, we have a few KCATA routes that come through here. I think we kind of rely a lot on KCATA to push a lot of the information out. All the Indibus routes and times and bus stops are all located on KCATA's website. So again, we kind of have a good relationship with them, and they do publish a lot of that stuff out there. So other than that, I know we've kind of talked about the Indibus Access program that does the dial-a-ride, ride-share programs and stuff like that are available as well too. So there are quite a few transportation options out there, and again, the city's really taken the initiative in the last few years to make sure that they're readily available and that we can hopefully reach everybody with those systems.
So I can speak to this from more the event planning aspect of it. When we do plan events, we make sure that access is a part of that. Not necessarily the bus routes, but making sure that those of different abilities can gain access to the location that we're at. So when we are doing the groundbreakings for the different events, is there a way that we can get people that may not be able to walk across uneven ground to the location via sidewalk, or have it near enough that they could get to it? Those are things that are considered as part of the planning, and can continue to improve.
And one real quick thing I'll add too, Meg, is that I know when we did our comprehensive plan, when we had the public meeting, we utilized Facebook Live for that. We've also done that with the budget town hall, I believe, and I'm sure certain other events that I'm not readily aware of right now, but we have used that as a method to really communicate with people who are not able to physically be located at the meeting. We also use YouTube, I know, for public meetings. You're all live on YouTube right now. You might not even know it, but you are. And the city does, as far as city council meetings, planning commission meetings and stuff like that, they're all on City 7. So, not necessarily speaking directly maybe to this policy, but it is something that the city does do to those citizens who are not able to come to the meetings because of maybe transportation issues or whatever they may be. So.
That has been a goal of our engagement. So the comprehensive plan engagement that we did at the library, we had it on Facebook Live and allowed people to ask questions that way. We, for the budget town hall, also had it on Facebook Live and allowed people to do it that way. The Truman Award at the Truman Library was also done on Facebook Live, so individuals that may not have necessarily been able to leave at that time. And for many of those larger events, we will either play the entire meeting on City 7, or we'll do a highlight of that event, to sort of a news style package that showcases what happened while that we were there.
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely look, and that can be a recommendation even through this process, is we can kind of look at our current bus stops to make sure that we are hitting all those facilities as well too. There's many facilities in the city right now that we don't necessarily reach through that system. But the city's always been pretty flexible at changing bus stops, or possibly looking at route alternatives within the bus to make sure that we are, touching the places that we need to with those bus routes. So again, through the Community for All Ages, I think that's an appropriate recommendation possibly, is to add to kind of do an inventory of where our current stops are located, and to make sure that we are reaching the places that we need to be age friendly.
And timing is everything. Truman Heartland Community Foundation has been working with KCATA and some of the healthcare facilities in Eastern Jack. So it's my understanding that KCATA is ripe for those kinds of discussions. So any other questions or discussion on what might be a policy for the city before we go into the two actions? We can always come back and revisit. So there are two actions. The first, 4D, the city communication plan includes strategies to work with partners to inform people at risk of social isolation about community activities and events. And we've kind of talked about those. So is there anything that we should have said? I did make a note that with community partners, that I think Independence is connected with the emergency services, the work that's being done right now, so that there's the emergency services network that's looking at specifically how are we identifying vulnerable populations in the event of a disaster or emergency. So you're working with partners with that, and then is Independence working with the homeless task force? Because that would plug you into those with those partners that are looking at vulnerable populations too.
We are working with the Continuum Care, Greater Kansas City Coalition in homelessness. So their monthly meetings we attend, and have had opportunity to participate in the point in time count. And so we're doing everything to be actively engaged with helping to ensure homeless prevention services are met.
Through our utilities, we also have a program that allows people to register and let us know if they are, for medical reasons, particularly dependent on electricity. So as appropriate, we can triage those residents in the event of an outage.
Any other partners that anyone has questions about, whether the city's involved with different partners on this? Okay. So the last action, the city partners with community organizations to develop and implement opportunities for utilizing and showcasing the skills and contributions of all ages, cultures, and abilities. And what I can just say is that in the other assessments, cities they fill out a lot on this, because they do a lot with partners around art commissions and art fairs and of all ages, and just a variety of programs that they're doing to showcase contributions. So I would imagine Independence is going to be similar.
I think we could, if Mr. Hahn, if you'd like to kind of share more information on the Heritage Festival, or Mehek, because it certainly is an opportunity to highlight cultural diversity and add.
So in the last couple weeks, the council has formed a committee that is focused particularly on this festival, and will be renewing efforts on that program that will be different than previous years, including a potentially new location for the festival itself. So more information will be made public as appropriate on that. We have a number of programs and efforts that we work on a regular basis with our community partners. The utilities have regularly raised funds to help with those who need assistance in utility payments and work through the Community Service League on that. We work with the Community Service League on the Homeless Coalition. There's so many different programs, it would take a long time just to list them.
Yeah, and I'll real quick add too. I mean, there's a lot of programs and a lot of organizations that the city works with. You know, we have a lot of religious organizations within the city. We have so many different neighborhoods that we're working with. The Square Association, Inglewood Business District. We're trying to kind of energize the Fairmount Business District through all that stuff. So there are a lot of partnerships that we continue to try to build on a lot of those things and make sure that, you know, we're communicating with those groups and that we are doing things and creating policies that help out those organizations as well.
And I could just be missing some of this, but is there a place, like, does the city have a portal or some type of conduit where, say, like there's an island festival that's gonna be on the square that is super cool, and it'd be great for the entire community to know, but, like, I don't know, do they let you know that they're doing it so that you all can let people know? I mean, is there just some way that these events can be known?
So there is a new special events policy that was launched at the beginning of May for the city, and it helps streamline the permits that are required for events such as the Island Festival for different groups, from your neighborhood block party to Santa Calagon, all of those different events and in that spectrum. And there is a page on our website that those events that do not qualify for cross promotion on the city platform, so City Scene 7 and our social media, they're listed there, and that's
Okay.
indep.us/special events.
Okay.
And you can find the calendar of those events that have requested permits from the city. Again, this is a fairly new thing, not quite 2 months old, so we continue to find new ways to share information on that effort. The special event policy does allow for those entities that are partnering with the city and meet the criteria to promote on the city platform. So City 7, City Scene, Facebook event, and our website. So.
Thank you.
So this ends then the social inclusion, communication, and participation. Unless there's an idea or a point of discussion. Now, when we meet again in the next, the final one, which is on health services, if there's anything in the first 3 meetings that we've had, there'll be time to revisit any of those if there's time. So the fourth topic really has to do with how are we communicating with all of our residents, with maybe a special consideration for those that are the most vulnerable and perhaps the most isolated. And what is the city doing to help increase just their participation just in general? So how that differs from topic 5, civic participation employment, this is really more focused on how is the city engaging people to become involved with the city? Whether that's through a commission or volunteering or employment. So one is just stay healthy, stay active, and we're communicating with you. This one is civic participation, specifically providing opportunities for residents to be involved in the city functions. So there's only one policy, and the city has a policy in place to encourage civic participation by all age groups in the community. And I only have one example of what a community has done. Most say that they encourage through applications for both employment and volunteer opportunities on the website, and they also offer hard copies. So almost everyone's doing that. One recommendation that emerged was a city felt like they needed to develop an implementation plan for this topic and how it integrates with the city's strategic objectives. But for the most part, they're talking about how they make employment and volunteer opportunities available.
So recently, we have strongly encouraged civic engagement in our boards and commissions by an article in City Scene letting people know of the application process and having a link to that on social media for those individuals that are engaged in promoting potential change for the city. We are also regularly sharing a link to the application process so that they have a direct access to potentially fill that out. So we're looking to directly engage with those individuals that are seeking to provide change in the city. As to the employment, we continue to look for new opportunities to share that. We have recently redone the police department's website to do an IPDjobs.com, which sort of presents the police department in a new way and focuses on the job specifically for that entity and how they can get involved there. Volunteer programs are regularly highlighted in City Scene and other Facebook and other city platforms for those events as appropriate.
Okay, so the rest are actions that a city might consider to do. The first is the city maintains and promotes a list of volunteer and employment opportunities within city government and offers an easy means to apply, including drop-in mail, online, and telephone. So the one recommendation that emerged, and it must have been from an Eastern Jack, although I think this was Kearney, actually, but are you familiar with Truman Heartland Community Foundation's Get Connected, Boomers Get Connected effort? Are you all familiar with the Boomers Get Connected? So their recommendation was to investigate whether the city can access the Get Connected program, which is an incredibly robust online volunteer software program that's administered by United Way of Greater Kansas City as a way to promote city volunteer opportunities, and then use the city website and Facebook page to encourage residents to visit that site that will link that back to you. I know that they would be willing to talk to the communications department about how to access the Get Connected.
So the Truman Heartland Heritage Foundation actually presented to the city's leadership team, which is our department directors, on this program, and we have had discussions on those events as appropriate that need volunteers, promoting them through this website.
So this is a website that offers the opportunities for cities, for libraries, and any kind of nonprofit to create a profile and upload their volunteer opportunities. And the back end of it is just incredibly amazing to keep it organized, and when it's the deadline is over, it just automatically takes it off. So there's the opportunities for organizations to develop a profile to upload their volunteer opportunities on a consistent basis. And then there's an opportunity for individuals to create their own profile and indicate the different kind of issues or organizations that you are interested in getting alerts on when volunteer opportunities come available, and then to manage your volunteer work through that. The analytics for both the organizations and the individuals will tell you how much you volunteered, what that's worth in terms of paid employment, which is more helpful for organizations as they apply for grants. But it's very robust, and I just encourage you to make your own profile. And it's a way to help increase civic participation across the region. And I think that you probably know just the incredible partner you have with Truman Heartland Community Foundation as a foundation here in Eastern Jack. So any other questions about promoting volunteer and employment opportunities? You covered that pretty. Any questions? Okay, the next one, the city provides flexible options for volunteers of all ages and abilities, including training, recognition, and guidance. And this action is stated this way in recognition that volunteer management is more than just saying we have volunteers. But it's encouraging cities to consider if they have someone on staff or someone, could be a volunteer, but who is trained in volunteer management and administration. So when you do have volunteers, their experience is a positive one.
Well, just through my efforts to kind of get more information, I wanted to share that what I did know, that there were opportunities to volunteer within different departments, and you may have to contact someone in Parks or someone with HR. So I would, based on my own experience, like to recommend that there's some way to streamline that process, and it may be as what you've shared through something similar with Truman, to kind of get that streamlined and have one point of contact if possible, because potentially Meg could have shared, HR could have shared, another gentleman that I spoke with at Parks could have as well. So for me, I was just thinking, okay, we might need to streamline the process.
Well, at Palmer Center, we have over 80 active volunteers who help with everything from the meal program to calling the homebound seniors who get home delivered meals, to helping with the fitness office type tasks. And I know that's just within the Palmer Center, but also within the greater Parks and Recreation. Each of the area has a wide variety of volunteers, and then we've done recognition. We have an annual volunteer breakfast to recognize the volunteers citywide, all the different departments assist with, as well as at the Palmer Center. We have our own recognition program just for our volunteers, where we recognize them individually, and then also the number of hours that they contribute is invaluable.
Speak from an outsider's knowledge, we do train our tourism volunteers as well, so those individuals that are representing the city at the different locations, and they also receive a separate banquet for the tourism volunteers, which includes I believe about 200 individuals generally, and they receive recognition pins for the numbers of years of service, I believe the top of which is 25. So many of our volunteers are long-term, have shown a long-term commitment to the community.
Shawnee, Kansas is probably the poster child in this for our region, because they actually hired a part-time volunteer coordinator who, I think, Tina, based on what you said, that any question that comes in about volunteer opportunities, whether it's through the Park District or anywhere from the city, it goes through her. And she's responsible for training department heads, that they may provide the training or she may provide the training. And they learned about this program through, well, it was a gentleman in their community that volunteered and wanted to get back to the city, and so he volunteered to take on this issue. But he found this publication, which I can send to Tina, which is written specifically for cities on how they might investigate and consider whether a volunteer coordinator, a professional position would be appropriate. With Shawnee, they were able to quantify that by bringing on volunteers to do things like going around and collecting illegal signs. They had this group of retired gentlemen that's what they did every day. It was their purpose. But there were a whole lot of volunteer positions that when this guy went around to the different department heads and said, put on your wish list, and what could you do more strategically, or the kinds of activities that you would really like to do if you had a volunteer to do some of these other activities. So they developed the program around that. So I will send that report to Tina. Carol Gonzalez, who's now at Mark, but she was the city manager at the time was able to show that through the use of volunteers, it was saving the city something like it was either 200-some thousand or 300-some thousand dollars a year. But they're the only ones that we know of right now in the city where there's an actual volunteer coordinator. And I would imagine their volunteer coordinator would be happy to talk to whoever, that would be appropriate. Let me see if there was any. Okay. Arnie, so going to 5D. The city encourages stakeholders, community organizations, and nonprofits serving its community to work with volunteers of all ages, cultures, and abilities, using best practices and guidelines for volunteer engagement and management, promoted by organizations such as Shepherd Center's Coming of Age, and they no longer do that program. The United Way of Greater Kansas City, Wyandotte County, Nonprofit Connect. Nonprofit Connect has a Volunteer Management Institute, which is very good. But also the Boomers Get Connected website would also be a resource. So I think you probably have already responded to this, haven't you, without repeating? I think the main thing is that there are resources to help with best practices in working with volunteers and managing them. And I don't see that anybody had a recommendation from the other cities on this, other than to maybe look into the Nonprofit Connect's Volunteer Management Institute. So any other discussion? Okay.
Can we recommend that the city look into a volunteer or someone who would coordinate for the departments? Because I think that's a pretty good idea. I don't know how to word it, but.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to think to not necessarily look into it, but to even strengthen it, because we do take advantage of a few volunteers that I can think of right off the top of my head that do a few things. I know you mentioned sign enforcement. We have a few individuals that actually do help us in our department do some of those, small We Buy Houses signs and stuff like that, and help us get those out of there right away, especially during the weekends when we don't actually have staff out there. But again, yeah, I would say if anything to strengthen it. Because just to build off what we currently have right now, yeah.
So are these folks they just volunteer on their own? They're not necessarily organized in any way?
There was some organization years ago to get these folks to help us out with specifically the sign enforcement that I can think of. We've had a few drop off over the years, but there still are a few out there who are still actively engaged in doing it. How that was created, I don't know. That was well before my time here, but I know we still do take advantage of them.
Yeah, it might be, maybe not necessarily a position, but like a task force or a group of people that do that or something.
Yeah.
A volunteer to
Yeah.
coordinate the volunteers.
Yes, exactly. You volunteer to take care of that?
And there's various other volunteer events that the city's, involved in that are put on by organizations. I can think of the citywide cleanup that we had recently and stuff like that, where we're utilizing as many volunteers as we can to fulfill a lot of these functions. So there's a lot of programs out there, and the city does partner with a lot of the organizations to do these volunteer events.
Okay, so I think that's going as a recommendation.
Can I ask a question? Because we talked about quantifying the monetary value of this, perhaps. And usually that's what gets people's attention, that justifies that kind of position. So maybe there ought to be some language in that recommendation about figuring out how to quantify it. There's got to be something out there. Maybe a Google search for an hour might find something,
Yes, sir.
Okay, great.
Attempting to scroll through my pictures very quickly, but I have hundreds on my phone, so it's going to take longer than it's worth. We do present a check at the tourism volunteer banquet representing the amount of time that has been given to the community and the estimated value of that, and it is a significant amount every year.
That's cool. Do we tell
Okay, three more. So 5E, the city and its partners encourage local businesses to adopt flexible employment practices to meet the needs of citizens of all ages. And what I can tell you is that most cities are saying that, that this is something that they don't feel is within their realm of responsibility. One recommendation was to consider suggesting to the chamber that it invite a presenter to talk about flexible employment practices for all ages and abilities. They felt like that's something that they could do, is make a suggestion on a presentation topic, but most felt this was beyond their realm.
Let me jump into that real quick. I know with the city, we recently created the Regulated Industries Division, handles business licensing, liquor licensing, rental licensing, now health inspections as well. While I kind of do agree that maybe this isn't something that the city directly wants to build in through policy or regulations or something like that, encouraging it is a different story in my opinion, and I think we are trying with this division as we continue to build it to do a little bit more outreach to our businesses on different things that we can do, different programs available for businesses on how to build your business. The city, the chamber, the Independence Economic Development Council does have the Innovation Center, which is kind of a nice business startup that we can help there. And again, through those, you kind of can get into some flexible employment practices on some different things that they can help encourage. But the city does work hand in hand with the chamber frequently, and I think there are ways that we could definitely help with some outreach on this and some different things that we can do. Like I said, I don't think we need to necessarily adopt policy or regulations to force the issue by any means, but I think there's some good outreach that can take place on this issue.
Does the city practice that in and of itself? The
As
city
far as
flex work, flexible schedules, or,
there's definitely different positions out there. I mean, a lot of the positions that we're hiring are obviously 8 to 5 positions. There's definitely opportunities for other positions out there depending on what the positions are. Internally, and it really probably is department by department. I think our department, we're very flexible on a lot of things to make sure that our employment base is able to be at work. If there's appointments and stuff like that, there's ample leave time the city offers employees for those types of events and stuff like that. So I'm not aware of any issues, at least in our department, but I think we're pretty flexible on that stuff.
because I think just as I agree, I don't think the city really has to have any hands in this, but it's kind of a cool story for the city to tell. If you're practicing that, it might be just subliminally encouraging the businesses to be also more flexible and respectful of where you're at in your life.
So could a recommendation be that, as appropriate, to highlight your best practices to model flexible employment practices for all ages?
Yeah.
Because it's, imitation's the best form of flattery. And can you reframe what you said earlier, that you could do some more outreach?
Again, with our Regulated Industries Division, it's a division that is going to be a year old here in less than a week. So we're continuing to build that division and kind of explore different things we can do to not only regulate businesses, but to help build businesses, partnerships that we can form through different organizations and stuff like that. So with that, I think we are more than open to any recommendations that we can do working with businesses in just ways that we can make that division really grow and be an asset to the city.
I think telling everybody, because you really are. I mean, it's really a very easy city to work with.
How does this sound? That the city continue to participate in outreach efforts through the Regulated Industries Division. This is where, in its effort to encourage business development, which may include flexible employment practices and leverages the workforce of independence.
I don't think I could have worded it better myself.
That's what you said.
Almost verbatim, yeah.
She's very good.
Excellent caption.
Okay, so 5F, the city and its partners develop an outreach plan to ensure residents of all ages are included in community and civic conversations. And we have one recommendation from a city who, their recommendation is to work with civic class instructors at the high school to get more high school age residents involved in community conversations. So that's one that bubbled up.
So Charlie may be able to add additional to this, but we utilize CDBG funds to support an effort with the Community Service League to provide training. We have done it for both welding and nurse practitioners.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, and again, the city's really been really proactive in partnering with a community services league on a lot of those programs, and we work with them, I would say, hand in hand on a lot of issues like that. But again, the city does have a pot of CDBG funds that we get every year that we are able to, again, go out into the community and try to build on a lot of key things out there. So that is definitely one thing that we are doing is using them to educate the citizens and try to create jobs and those training opportunities to fit into where we see the employment needs within the community.
That sounds more like 5E rather than 5F.
I wouldn't say, I mean, again, we're not really getting into flexible employment practices with that. To me, that's more of we're trying to build a workforce to,
job training.
with like nurse practitioners, for example, my understanding is that was something a few years ago that was pinpointed as we have a glaring hole of employment there right now that we really need to be filled. So again, we tried to direct money at that to increase that sector of employment and to get more workers in that sector of employment.
And
Probably still a need.
I want to make sure we give credit where credit is due. I believe that the nursing program is through 12 Blocks West.
Okay.
12 Blocks West. It is a not-for-profit, and they are training through Truman, and their CNA training, they are immediately going to employment after they go through the job training experience.
That's great. Okay, drum roll for the last one. The city ensures that meeting locations are accessible to residents and meet the communication needs and challenges of diverse population.
Yeah, I mean, when we get into this again, as far as meeting locations, we have a majority of our meetings in this room right here. There's a few other meetings spread throughout City Hall. I know the city is currently are looking at a city's hall master plan right now to kind of look at what we have as far as accessibility within this building and how accessible it is. We have accessible entrance really down here for City Hall with an elevator that can go to all floors. So we technically meet ADA requirements, but there are a lot of speed bumps, I guess I would say, as far as accessibility goes with this building and some of our other buildings as well too. But we always look at that stuff, and through that City Hall master plan that we're working on right now, I know we're outlining a lot of that stuff and seeing how we can do a lot of those things better. But again, I go back to with our meetings again. This room right here is very accessible to the public. We provide other opportunities again for people who can't physically be here to be engaged and to participate in meetings via the web and things like that. So.
But you also use libraries and like the genealogy center for meetings too, right?
Yeah. I mean, we do try to get out, I know, in the community a little bit more as well too, to kind of spread around and do some things. When we were looking at our comprehensive plan, for example, we had a few go to the meetings that they were calling, if you recall that, where, we were actually trying to pinpoint certain areas that we were getting out to. They went to Independence Center, tried to get to a few of the festivals, really spent an afternoon up in the square. We spent a morning at the transit center, hit the farmers market, places like that to really try to engage the public. We're in the process right now of another Planning Sustainable Places grant that we're trying to apply for with Mark right now, and through our public engagement, we've kind of tried to mirror some of the engagement methods we had there to get out to the public, not necessarily to bring public to one centralized location, but for us to get out there and do engagement, more centralized engagement with them.
We also did meeting in a box.
Yes, yes, and meeting in the box was a very interesting thing. It wasn't as successful as we hoped it would be, but we still did have some good feedback there. And what that was is essentially you had a box where there was meeting materials in there, and we could give them to organizations in the community to take and then have their own meeting and then give us the results back. A few organizations did take advantage of it, and it's great when it works, but trying to get that word out there and get those organizations to participate is another area that we probably need to build on next time. So
It is a great idea,
Yeah.
and I feel like we could make that work again
Yes.
if we needed to.
Meg, I think that you mentioned, so when you bring these programs and partner into the communities, is there communication somehow about the accessibility? So if I wanted to go to one of these, I would know if I needed accommodations?
So in our promotional materials, we do not necessarily explicitly, but it is part of our planning to ensure that we try to be as accessible as possible. So the majority of our city facilities are accessible. So if we are at George Owens or Truman Memorial Building, Palmer Center, the City Hall, Sermon Center, all of those have been upgraded to ADA compliance. If we were doing an outside event, talking about the levelness of the ground and how people can access it, where we can arrange the event to ensure that people of all abilities can easily see or sit or walk up to the event are part of the overall conversation.
So this communication could look like hieroglyphics, but is it possible to have like symbols that represent like strollers and wheelchairs and things that could go on the event page that could say, you can do this?
That's a good idea.
A sneaker?
Infographics.
We could
Yeah.
look at infographics. Thinking for the different Facebook events have been one of the most popular ways that we've seen recent participation in promotion of the events. So having sort of a key at the bottom of the graphic with the different elements of family friendly, accessible, all of those different pieces.
We hear that with residents a lot on this topic, that they might participate more if they knew, is there extra handicap accessible parking? Because there's going to be a lot. And it might just be that if you have questions about accessibility for this meeting, contact whoever at the staff to talk about what those would be. But we do hear from a number that, I mean, it's a significant number, they would go to some of these if they knew it would be easy for them to get there. And so they're saying, I wish that I knew who to call or if it was on the website. And I actually see that in action, and I think this was Carney, that Mark's staff is going to share our standard language for meeting announcements that informs people on how to request accessibility accommodations. So do you already have that language down? Because if not, I can share what Mark uses. Okay, well, I'll send that to Tina. And I don't think I did that to the other, was that Carney? So I need to do that for Carney too. So this ends 4 and 5, and it was 90 minutes. So any final discussion or any questions or comments? You have a lot going on, you're very thorough, so hopefully you walk away feeling like you're really doing a good job. Few recommendations. The process for this is after the next session, Julie will put together the draft and the draft recommendations that will go to Teeny and Charlie, and I'm not sure exactly how that will bubble up, but, and then you'll have an opportunity to either revise or accept, or the staff may, after consideration, give justification why it's too hard, but it's just, and then after you all look at it and approve, it'll go to the, I think, either the department head or the city council for final recommendations and approval. So anything else? Other than you're ready to go home?
not quite.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. And, for the health one, because you did mention Community Services League, are they a big partner with the health services? Because you might ask, and I'm blanking on his name, the director.
Doug Cowan.
Yeah, if he'd like to attend, and the health department director maybe, or,
Oh, we certainly will
Yeah.
help represent it on our assessment.
great. And thanks for all your input too, it was really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Real quick, we got a little bit out of order initially on the meeting here. We did have the one public hearing item. You'll see on your agenda that that applicant had requested to continue that to the July 24th commission meeting. So, as such, now as we have or published for the public hearing, I do need a motion from the commission to continue that to July 24th.
I move that we continue case 18-125-01, rezoning of 19700 East 39th Street, Place South, till July 24th.
Second.
We're ready for the vote?
Commissioner Preston,
Yes.
Commissioner McLean,
Yes.
Commissioner Wiley,
Yes.
Chairman Ashba.
Yes, case
Thank
number 18-125-01, rezoning has been continued until the next meeting. Are there any, we didn't have any minutes, right?
Were they not included in your packet?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I didn't get my packet.
Billy made me put it back.
Really?
Yeah.
Touch base with you on that afterwards.
Yeah, I did stop my mail though, so, as I was out of town.
I wish I'd thought of that.
If they're not there, we can continue those to the next meeting as well, too. I think.
I didn't, unless I'm missing some, I didn't see
Yep,
them.
right there.
That's it?
Well, I don't know, is it?
Very brief, yeah.
Okay, I stand corrected. Minutes are approved as written. How about that?
With no changes, there's no changes, yes. Yeah, and you'll see with those minutes real quick too, they're a little bit shorter. When we don't have any public hearing items, those are the ones that we're very detailed on because those minutes do go to council. Since this was just the Community for All Ages, it was just a quick summary on those, so.
See, I just got used to 4 and 5 pages of
Yeah.
minutes instead of the
4 and 5
one.
pages is light, so.
I'm looking forward to some more of the minutes like that, Charlie. And I did have a question. Did you get by the used car?
Yeah, actually, I
No.
had that up here because I was anticipating that you would ask that question. We did start a code case on that. Letter has been sent to the business owner, and we have our first recheck inspection 1 week from today on that. They're typically given 2 full weeks to relieve the issue. We'll go out and recheck, and if it's not taken care of at that point, that's when we take further action. So I have not been by there. Then the day after you had let us know about it, I did drive by and did see what you were talking about, but I don't know if those issues are still there or not.
Okay, well, I'm glad to know that I noticed something that was correct. So, are there any more issues from the commissioners that they wish to discuss? Okay.
No issues I want to discuss.
As soon as,
And you will have both meetings in July, just an FYI.
Oh, it's 7:36.
we stand adjourned at 7:36 PM.